Hi everyone, my name is Bo and welcome to my detailed review on Power Ledger, the Australian-based startup company looking to revolutionise the way renewable energy is traded in the Australian and the international landscape. Now you've come to the right place because I personally have over 11 years in the power industry in Australia. I've also studied small-scale residential solar and battery systems as part of my master's degree, where I've looked at case studies and done business cases on how to make them more financially and economically feasible. Quick disclaimer, I am in no way officially sponsored by Power Ledger, nor am I officially endorsing them. This is my own personal opinion based on my experience and my feel for the market. So stick around and let's get into it. So guys, what is Power Ledger and what are they actually trying to do? Before we can really answer that question, we need to understand how the Australian energy market works and who the key players are that are involved. So in Australia, we have a real mix of privately and state-owned companies and corporations that both maintain, operate and sell energy to Australian consumers. So what this means is there are varying models and complexities into how the Australian energy companies are interlinked and how energy is traded in the Australian market. Every single Australian power company, whether it is privately or state-owned, falls under the Australian Energy Regulator, or the AER, which is a national board that essentially governs how these companies can operate, what they can charge for revenue, how much they can spend on operating expenditure, and how they need to operate to ensure that the consumer or the customer gets the best value for money. Now at the moment, the option for people who have got rooftop solar is to either use that energy generated during the day, to either store it in batteries, which are at the moment still quite costly and expensive to install, or you can on-sell that excess energy generated through something called a feed-in tariff. Now when private retail companies are involved, they can dictate how much they're willing to pay for that excess energy generated. Now at the moment, it looks like there's about an average of between 10 to 6 cents per kilowatt hour that is basically paid for by these private retail companies. Now because there's a private retail company as the middleman, they basically need to take a cut of that profit to cover their overheads to make it economically viable for them to process and to install the meters and to operate essentially, and to allow these customers to on-sell that excess energy. Now we're ready to come back to Power Ledger and what they're actually trying to do. Now what Power Ledger are trying to do is to make a peer-to-peer energy trading system for people with solar and other forms of renewable energy to trade that energy with each other on the blockchain through automated smart contracts. Now from a high level, it almost looks as if they are aiming to provide an intermediary service rather than have a retailer or the customer have to on-sell the energy to a retailer. However, in their business model, they are actually allowing not only retailers but utilities to manage some of these services on their application for the consumer as well. So they're basically trying to be inclusive of all the key players out there, but actually ultimately letting the consumer or the prosumer, the person generating the energy, decide on what they want to do in a decentralized way. Now guys, my very first thoughts after reading the detailed white paper, reading every single piece of documentation they had, is this project is highly ambitious. The complexities of the Australian energy market and the power utilities cannot be underscored. So what Power Ledger are trying to do is extremely ambitious. However, their system and the way they've gone about this has been very well thought out of. Their documentation is detailed, it is highly technical, and it is very well presented. The team is very highly qualified, and we'll have a look at those in a little bit more detail in a minute. And they are ultimately addressing a market need. They are trying to increase the economics and the feasibility of owning these distributed energy generating systems such as solar and even wind down the track. And this is something that consumers want, and what it's going to do is it's actually going to drive up the demand for solar systems in Australia, and it's going to increase the adoption, and it's actually going to basically allow consumers to have more freedoms with their energy and how much they're generating. Now guys, here are just some quick notes and my personal opinions on the team at Power Ledger. Now Dr. Gemma Green, she's a very highly qualified academic who has studied the challenges and the opportunities of rooftop solar for her PhD. Now that is very good. She's got a background in this area and she obviously knows what she's doing. Now David Martin, the Managing Director, he's a former executive in 2 state-owned DNSPs, or distribution network service providers. Now that is a big thing, guys, because David's going to have contacts into those organisations, and he's also going to know how they operate and the rules that they're governed by and the intricacies with the Australian Energy Regulator, something that's very, very important. John is a director of another company called Ledger Assets, which is a blockchain-based development company. Now that's a very good thing because they've got people experienced in blockchain technology in their team, something that we've talked about before in previous companies. Now Dr. I hope I pronounce his name right, Gav Van Eck. He's the co-founder of Ledger Assets with John. He is an investor, he's a business founder, he's got a background in systems architecture and software, another very, very important thing as well. Now guys, just quickly having a look at their core team, just breezing over. They've obviously got a big team to start off with, which is quite interesting. They've obviously been working on this for some time. Now the first couple of things that stood out to me, guys, is Mark Griffiths here and Alastair. Now, Mark is an Ethereum engineer. Now, there is a worldwide shortage of people experienced in the Solidity programming language on the Ethereum blockchain. So having someone specifically experienced in that is important and a very good thing. Now, Alastair, he's a systems engineer, and Federico, software engineer, and you've got Christian, an energy systems specialist. So guys, just quickly breezing over the team, they've got people with a lot of very good backgrounds, a lot of very technical backgrounds, and the niches in the different areas that you would need to get a platform like this to be successful. Now, as I said earlier, guys, my first impressions was this is very, very ambitious. However, Powerledger have actually already had some achievements before they even got to the ICO stage. So in summary, some of their achievements are they've already conducted successful trials in Australia with a small scale village. So they've actually essentially done a proof of concept. They have deployed the system or parts of the system, don't go into specific detail, with a New Zealand based service provider called Vector. Now I assume that to be operational, but I couldn't see any other documentation on that. They've achieved something called back on ramping with a bank in Australia, presumably. I'm not sure exactly which bank that is. They have deployed this system in Western Australia or parts of Western Australia with one of their partners, which is Western Power. Now, Western Power is a state-owned DNSP or distribution network service provider, so that's a pretty big deal. They've already got a major service provider utility in Australia on board, and they've already branched into EVs with a partnership with Synergy, which is the Western Australian state-owned retailer. So guys, already some really big achievements before even hitting ICO stage, which gives me a lot of confidence in this company and their vision moving forward. Okay guys, now onto the technology of Powerledger and how the system's actually going to operate. So they've built their own blockchain called the ICO chain, which is in-house developed. It's a private proof of stake system, which proof of stake essentially means if you hold a bunch of tokens, you receive awards by the more tokens you hold, you essentially have a greater stake in verifying transactions or acting as a miner. Now this is a low energy consumption method of proofing the network, and it's basically the next step past proof of work. So that's a good thing. So this ecosystem is built on the Ethereum blockchain, which is good, and that means that any upgrades or developments to the Ethereum blockchain automatically will get passed on to Powerledger. Now they've built an application called Fusebox, which is a layer between the consumer and the prosumer, or the person generating the energy, and they're actually working on something with geolocation. So basically a priority demand based trading system based on the location of a person either requiring the energy or a person generating the energy. So it essentially would prioritize if a certain household is needing energy, then and the system knew that there was someone located close to them within the suburb, it would prioritize the energy to be distributed from that person generating the energy to the person that needed the energy. Okay guys, now onto the tokens themselves. So the primary token, which will be issued in the token sale and traded on exchanges, is called the Power token, which is POWR token. Now it's an ERC20 token, which means it's been created on the Ethereum blockchain. Now some of the benefits from owning this token, if you're going to use it in the system itself, is you'll be given priority access to asset germination events. Holders of these tokens in the proof of stake system would actually get rewards from using it for verification purposes. Basically, prosumers and consumers will be rewarded in power tokens for purchasing renewable energy. So if you choose actually to purchase renewable energy using the system, you'll be rewarded in power. It can be stored, or it will be able to be stored, in Power Ledger's application software Fusebox when it's actually available. Now guys, the way that Power Token operates in the Power Ledger ecosystem is you would purchase Power Tokens from an exchange. You then convert those Power Tokens to something called Sparks. Now Sparks is like the system inbuilt currency which is used to pay for energy and to reward prosumers or people who are generating that energy with that Sparks currency. Now that currency will be tied to the local currency of the country that Power Ledger is operating in, and the value will also will basically fluctuate with the value of the dollar. So the Sparks value will never change. However, as the demand increases for the Power Token price will increase. So prosumers, when they generate energy, will receive Sparks. They can then trade those Sparks for fiat currency or for Power Tokens. Now, just as a side note, the Power Token from Power Ledger is not to be confused with Power Coin or PWR, currently listed on CoinMarketCap. They are two different coins. Now, they're releasing 350 million Power Tokens to the public as part of the token sale. Now these tokens will be released onto exchanges between Q3 and Q4 of this year, so probably over the next 3 to 6 months. Now 250 million additional tokens will basically be held in the growth pool. Now the growth pool tokens will be held for a minimum of 2 years and may be released to retailers and utilities as part of an incentive campaign at some point. Now there's actually no specific detail on which exchanges these tokens will be released to and exactly what dates. So in total guys, the total token supply will be around 1 billion, and you're likely to have a circulating supply of probably between 350 million to probably about 500 million over the next few years, depending on how they distribute some of those growth pool tokens to the platform hosts and what the developers and founders choose to do with their tokens in 2 years' time. So guys, just to quickly finish up, if you wanted to participate in the ICO, it is still running. It does still have 4 days left. And look, I just want to run through a couple of challenges that I think Power Ledger might have as they go on and further implement their vision. Now, the one thing that you need to be aware of is it is quite a high token supply, and you may have quite a few extra tokens come into the market at a later date, which obviously would affect those supply and demand economics. Now another thing too is I think if I was to have a solar system, then I assume that I would need to have a smart meter installed at my premises to allow or for me to be able to go onto the platform. So for premises that don't have a smart meter, that meter may have to be upgraded, and I'm not sure exactly who would fund that. And look, they may encounter some resistance, I think, from retailers and regulatory bodies as well as other state-owned utilities. However, they do have an outstanding team, and they have people in that team that have those connections within those utilities, and that's, I think, going to be the thing that gets them across the line. So ultimately guys, should you invest? Well, that's up to you, but my ultimate opinion on the team and on the problem they're trying to solve and on how they've put everything together is I'm very impressed, and I think that they are destined for a successful future. So thanks so much guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next video. Thanks.